Locked on CJ Stroud continues. We started it yesterday. We're continuing it today. Yesterday, my guy Mo Murphy was with us, recapping Saturday's game. Today, looking at the numbers and asking a question. Are we underselling how good CJ Stroud was on Saturday? We will also touch on national championship updated odds from betonline.ag. All that and more in this live episode of Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes for the Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And we are back on our regularly scheduled Tuesday evening live show on YouTube and Twitter. If this is your first time checking out Locked on Buckeyes, I want to say welcome and thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes a part of your day. This podcast is free and available on all platforms. And make sure I want to appreciate everyone that makes this show the first listen of their day. After a performance that we saw from CJ Stroud on Saturday, this past Saturday afternoon in Piscataway, New Jersey, the thought came to my mind, are we underselling how good, how efficient, how crisp, how poised, all of these words we can describe how CJ Stroud played on Saturday? Are we underselling how good he played? It's a natural thing for us to hype up certain players and for us to really rise to the occasion based off our expectations to how a player played. But I'm curious if you or myself or other people, are we underselling? Are we really giving CJ Stroud's performance the credit and the recognition and the appreciation that we should? Go back to that game on Saturday. You go through all of his throws. I think he only had 6 incompletions. I believe it was 17 for 23. One bad throw that myself and Mo Murphy talked about just a day ago. And by the way, if you have not checked that episode out, already got some good reviews from that show, go back and check that out. You will not be disappointed. But aside from that one throw that was really blatantly bad, some other incompletions sprinkled in throughout the game, I don't know if we can properly put into words how good CJ Stroud looked after an absence, how good he looked after not playing the week before, after visibly you and I seeing, and the coaches and the medical staff as well confirming, that Stroud was not healthy, that Stroud's shoulder, his injury, was part of the reason that he was playing like he was. I don't know if we, myself, or other people know how to properly put into action, into words, the type of game that CJ Stroud played. Now, that's not saying people aren't doing their job very well. I'm not saying that at all. But the way that he played in that game is something that it's so easy to overlook the small, minute details. I mean, think about today's quarterback, NFL, college, high school. How many quarterbacks do you see that consistently keep their eyes downfield while they're scrambling, while they're rolling out in the pocket, while the play is taking a little bit longer to develop? How many quarterbacks do you see out there that we are looking at and saying, yeah, that guy right there, yeah, he is doing X, Y, and Z. He's doing it very well. How many guys do you see keep their eyes downfield? How many guys do you see scrambling and being a threat to run, also being a threat to throw the ball as well? Stroud, while he was rolling out numerous times, he was a threat to move the ball down the field with his arm. Oh, yes, that same arm that had shoulder that had given him issues and problems and probably provided some mental hiccups and hurdles for him. That same CJ Stroud was out there on Saturday afternoon making things look easy. Even the simplest of throws looked easy. Looked like a walk in the park for CJ Stroud. His performance was amazing. We can't expect, I'm going to say this, we can't expect more plays like that from CJ Stroud because his intangibles, the things that he does that you might not notice or that are very subtle or that pre-snap to post-snap that most guys that are first-year starters that have only started 4 games, nice to see you, Hummus, that have only started 4 games, Yeah, most guys are not doing that at the collegiate level. CJ Stroud, the quarterback. I'm happy, excited, and I love the growth that we have seen throughout the short and early portion of this season. I firmly believe for every college football team from Ohio State to Alabama to Georgia to Oregon, who just lost to Stanford, to Oklahoma and Texas in Red River, who play this weekend, to other teams all across the national college football landscape, the 5 weeks in college football season in October. Now, not every team is playing all 5 weeks. Ohio State has a bye game coming up after they play Maryland this Saturday. I believe every college football team firmly has the chance to raise their stock or lower their stock. We're going to find at the end of this month who the real pretenders are and who the real contenders are. I don't believe this is the time where we can say, so-and-so, I don't know, so-and-so, people like Stroud, people like Henderson, people like Olave and Wilson, they're going to rise to the occasion. Guys on defense, Denzel Burke, Tyleik Williams, Haskell Garrett, Taraja Mitchell, Ronnie Hickman. We've already seen some of them emerge, but we're going to find more guys on this team, just like CJ Stroud, have performances like he had this past Saturday, where maybe we might undersell what he did, not because we don't know how to use our words properly, but because they played so well, so well, that their performance is hard to describe, even in the words and the most eloquent, the man that knows every word of the dictionary. They might scramble in their brain to find the proper word or sequence of words to fit and to describe what that player did on the field in the month of October. Guys, this is Locked On Buckeyes Live. Very glad that you're here joining us today. Hummus Hero, who is a frequent listener and viewer here of the podcast, glad he is able to get the update and the bell from YouTube so he can know when the show goes live. For everyone that is subscribed, or if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Locked On Buckeyes, so you can get alerted every time a new show goes live. It helps the podcast and the YouTube channel grow, but also hit that bell so every time a new show goes live or a new show is uploaded, you are alerted so you can check out that video as well. It's also available, the podcast, in the audio version of the Odyssey app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your fine podcast. It's available for free, and I thank everyone for making this podcast the first listen of every single day. Hummus, I'll get to your question in a second. I'm going to move on very quickly to the offense and the rest of the offense. And speaking of possibly underselling how well Stroud played over this past weekend, what do the numbers say about his performance and other players on the offense, about how this offense stacks up against, and Stroud stacks up against other quarterbacks, Stroud that is, in the Big Ten Football Conference, and how he stacks up and other players on the offense stack up in the national landscape and the Big Ten Conference as well. Today, right now, Stroud's numbers are amazing. And how he stacks up, he's top 10 in numerous categories in the Big Ten, no further than 7th in one category. You'll know, and a couple of them actually that are right here on my paper. When it comes to national, his numbers are amazing. They might startle you when you hear them. When it comes to CJ Stroud by the numbers and how he stacks up against other people that are there that play football, that are quarterbacks this season, if I could get my words correctly. CJ Stroud is 4th in the Big Ten in passing yards, 1,293. He is number 23 in the country in that category. When it comes to completion percentage, he is 7th, 64.5. That is tied for 47th in the country. When it comes to CJ Stroud, his average yards per completion, 10.4 yards per completion. That's number 1 in the Big Ten Conference. Number 2, might I add, in the country. Long of 70 yards, tied for 44th, and then tied for 7th. And then 13 touchdowns, 10th in the country, number 1 in the Big Ten Conference. Passer rating of 181.9, that's number 1 in the Big Ten, number 9 in the country. And then QBR. This is an ESPN stat, started around 2006, 2007. I believe it's 2007. I'm just not sure. It could be 06 as well, one or the other. 85.3. Now, passer rating has no height. You guys may be people that follow stats in the NFL. A passer rating in the NFL has a cap at 158.3, which is perfect. In college, there is no cap. Don't ask me why there is a difference in one stat and there's a cap in one league and not the other. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. QBR is an ESPN stat. They started that. That is a cap at 100. It goes 0 to 100. CJ Stroud, 85.3, number 1 in the Big Ten. And in the country, he is number 6. The offense. How does the offense stack up against other national powers, other schools in the country? When you look at the numbers in the Big Ten, you're like, well, they're ranked like up towards the top because they're that good. Yards per game for Ohio State, 555.6. They are number 1 in the country and number 1 in the Big Ten. Passing yards per game, number 1 in the Big Ten, number 8 in the country at 336.2. Remember, Ohio State has had 3 quarterbacks play so far this season. One game Stroud didn't play. That might be the most amazing thing about the passing yards per game is that even in his absence, they're still number 1 in the Big Ten football conference in that category. Rushing yards per game, number 3 in the Big Ten, number 22 in the country at 219.4. Points per game, number 1 in the Big Ten, number 4 in the country at 45.0. The other 2 teams in the Big Ten that are beating Ohio State in rushing yards per game, they're 2 opponents that Ohio State will face later in the season. Michigan, number 1. Nebraska, number 2. Now, how does Ohio State's offense stack up against Alabama, the team that Ohio State lost to in the national championship last year? The number 1 team in the country, and it sure looks the part. They have looked the part all season long. Them and Georgia have clearly separated themselves from where they currently are, like from the rest of the pack. It's Alabama, it's Georgia, everybody else. There's going to be 1 tier, there's 2 tier. If you've got a 3rd tier, is Ohio State in tier 2 or are they in tier 3 as far as they're not undefeated, but they have looked good of late? Are they up to the caliber of the tier 2 teams? Or there might be 4 or 5 teams that are tier 2 caliber right now. Alabama, right now, yards per game, 462.6 to 555.6 for Ohio State. Passing yards per game, 299.2 to 336.2 for Ohio State. Rushing yards per game, 163.4 to 219.4. And then points per game, 45.6 to Ohio State's 45.0. What separates the 2 teams? The defense. I mean, it's clearly the defense. Ole Miss's offense and Ole Miss over the weekend, everybody was saying Ole Miss has a chance. Lane Kiffin playing up against Nick Saban. Nick Saban always beats the guys that he used to be their bosses. But, hey, Lane Kiffin is a guy. His offense is amazing. Matt Corral is amazing, doing amazing things over there at Ole Miss. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, that combo, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, that combo together, that's going to beat Nick Saban. We saw what happened. No, that defense is amazing. That defense is elite. And I love exactly what we're seeing from Ohio State's defense and progression. But the defense is what is holding them back so far, getting better. But what is why they are not one of the top 2 teams in the country? It's all about their defense. Travion Henderson, very quickly, I'm going to go ahead and look at some numbers from him. Big Ten Football Conference, he is number 4 in rushing yards on the season at 510, number 18 in the country, 9.4 yards per carry. First in the Big Ten Conference, number 3 in the country. Then last but not least, touchdowns, he has 7, 4th in the Big Ten Football Conference, and then tied for 12th in the country. That might be one of those things. And almost I didn't forget about your question. I'm going to touch that here in a second. Travion Henderson and his growth, lack of carries, lack of touches that he has had so far this season, and him being able to rise to the occasion and really a lot of his runs, I don't believe he got touched in the touchdown run he had early in the game. I believe it was first drive of the game. But in numerous runs that he has had that he has broken, he's not getting touched. That's not normal. I don't care if you're a true freshman, you're a grad transfer, you're a Heisman Trophy winning running back. Having those runs early in a year where you're not getting touched, that's a testament, 1, to your offensive line, 2, to your coaches and your running backs coach to help put you in the right place to be successful and teaching you the right things in practice and in film sessions. But once you're on the field, buddy, that's all you. Now, granted, they can assist you, but once you're on the field, buddy, that's you executing the things that you know you can and possibly doing a thing or two that is not something that you thought that you could do. Henderson's great, but the offense at Ohio State, it's next level. It's elite. They're going to be hitting on all cylinders over the next few weeks. TreVeyon Henderson, there will be a game where he's going to need 20 carries. Yes, 20 carries to help this team win. That comes from Ryan Day's mouth, not mine, but I firmly believe that as well. This offense together, CJ Stroud gave you a few numbers. People may be underselling how good he's played. It is not because they don't know how to use their words. He has just been that amazing so far this season. This is Locked On CJ Stroud for the day. One more day of Locked On CJ Stroud, hyping up, and not just hyping up, talking about his amazing performance this past Saturday against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Hummus, no little update yet on Cody Simon. I do know, for those wondering about TreVeyon Henderson and him not playing in the game, well, being pulled from the game early, that was Ryan Day's call. Ryan Day pulled him. And now he could have gone back in the game to play, but Ryan Day pulled him from the game. Ryan Day has said TreVeyon Henderson is, quote, good to go, end quote. That's an amazing sign for the future running back, the starting running back in the future of said true freshman running back, TreVeyon Henderson, not just against Maryland, but against Indiana, against Penn State, and against the rest of the opponents, Purdue, Nebraska, Michigan State, and Michigan, not in that order, the last four opponents in this 2021 season. betonline.ag, the official partners of the Locked On Podcast Network, they recently announced and put together their updated national championship odds, betting odds, that is. I got a little graphic that has a preseason odds, and it has the odds as that came out, I believe, Monday or Tuesday morning is when these odds came out. And when I look at this graphic, I'll go over the preseason odds. I'll also go over the current odds. And as I state, as my eyeballs tell me, Alabama and Georgia are head and shoulders above everybody else. You might be surprised at how Ohio State's betting odds are different now than they used to be. I'm going to go bottom to top here, and then we're going to do preseason odds first, and then the odds for today, the current odds for college football championship odds, national championship odds from our friends at betonline.ag. I'll start from the top, not go to the bottom. I'll start from the top. Alabama preseason was plus 260 favorites to win the national championship. Georgia plus 650. Ohio State plus 700. Oklahoma plus 650. Michigan was plus 10,000. Penn State plus 8,000. Cincinnati plus 8,000, Iowa plus 10,000, Texas plus 4,000, and then Oregon plus 5,000 odds to win the national championship. Why were the numbers so astronomically high for teams like Penn State, Michigan, Cincinnati, Iowa? Because their odds have significantly dropped from preseason until today. Ohio State's betting odds are not as good now as they were before the season. Oregon plus 5,000 betting odds to win the national championship. That has not changed. Texas plus 4,000. Iowa plus 4,000. Down significantly from the plus 10,000 where they were at the beginning of the season. Cincinnati plus 3,300. Penn State plus 2,500, as well as Michigan is the same. Once again, significantly better odds now than they used to be. Oklahoma and Ohio State plus 1,200. They're tied. Michigan, Penn State are tied. Ohio State, Oklahoma are tied. And then Alabama and Georgia are tied at plus 160. The plus 160, if you're betting, you're saying, I'm for Ohio State. I think Ohio State will win it. This might be the time to do so, to put your wager in. Because if you are a fan of the sports betting, you think that Ohio State will be progressing and improve enough that at the end of the season, nobody will want to beat them, I suggest to you, put your money in now. Because I think if you wait too long, if you wait a week or two down the road, that number will significantly start to drop, which will mean less money you will win if Ohio State wins the national championship at the end of the season. The way I think this progression will go for Ohio State, didn't think we would get here, but I believe that all of us believe that Ohio State will progress down the road. The way that I believe we will progress for Ohio State this season, and how Ohio State will possibly look at the end of this month, have a road test against the Indiana and Bloomington, which I do think Indiana over the next couple weeks will start to figure something out on offense. Not exactly the best thing, but start to figure something out on offense. And then against Ohio State, will Michael Penix Jr. start? Will it be Jack Tuttle? I don't know. I think Michael Penix Jr. might be on his way out from being the starting quarterback at Indiana. But Ohio State, I do think that Penn State game, Ohio State, I'm projecting a little bit further now than I thought I would be. I think Ohio State wins that game. Why? Because of the defense. Remember that same defense where I said that's holding Ohio State back, and that's part of the reason they're not not in that upper echelon or top tier conversation as one of the top two teams in college football right now. I firmly believe it is the defense that is currently holding Ohio State back. I firmly believe that. I think if the defense were slightly better against Oregon, if they're literally slightly better against Oregon with the hiccups and the hurdles that the offense put right in front of them, put right in front of the own offense in that game earlier this year in week number 2, Ohio State probably wins that game. And I know it wasn't all on the defense. A lot of people are going to look at the defense. Oh, you can't set the edge. Oh, you can't tackle. Oh, that man's wide open. Oh, the hole is huge right up the middle. Might I remind you, if the defense does their job once it gets a stop, Ohio State had the chance to win, but the offense numerous times had drives in the second half. No points. No points. No points. No points at all. So all of that talk early in the season about the defense, I think we all, myself included, sometimes overlook the importance of the lack of scoring in that Oregon game from the offense. I harped on the defense. We all need to harp on how the offense looked early in the season, which is why I think we might be underselling how good CJ Stroud played this past Saturday. But I do firmly believe, if Ohio State stays on this roll, if they continue to change up, and I do think the two high safety look that we're looking at and now the formation that we're seeing right now, if they continue with that and start doing some pre-snap looks and then changing that post-snap, let me let Jay be the first one to tell. I might not be the first one. I'll just reiterate what you've already heard. This Ohio State team might be scary to play in the month of November. I know from Maryland losing Dante Demas, we're going to talk more about that tomorrow and tomorrow's show on Thursday. Yes, on Thursday, if you're catching this video to be out Thursday morning. If you're catching the audio, same time, same place. Maryland losing Dante Demas due to a horrible, gruesome, ugly injury over this past week. It already had surgery. He is out for the season. Hope for a speedy, safe recovery. But with him losing him, I do think it's Ohio State's game to win. I do possibly see the spread being a 3-touchdown spread for Ohio State in Ohio State's favor. Not to the point that the final spread is out yet, but I do think that if it is a 3-touchdown spread, Ohio State covers that one easily. But in the month of November, a little projection into the future, if this defense starts to hit on all cylinders in the Indiana game and against Penn State, Nebraska, I feel sorry for you. Purdue, y'all better hope David Bell can do everything you can in his own power to help will y'all to victory. Because baby, oh baby, I don't know anybody that will want to play Ohio State at the end of the season based off the way that I believe you and I think this team will improve throughout the rest of the year. Thank you, everyone who has hopped in. Hummus for chatting along. I really appreciate it. That has enjoyed this live episode here of Locked On Buckeyes. You may see in the title, Locked On CJ Stroud, for a couple days. That is what we have been. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can also send me emails, all of your emails. Send them to jstevens317@gmail.com. Text me, hit the voicemail line, 850-462-5442. Text me, voicemail, whatever it is. We'll have a fun time continuing this conversation outside of the space of this here podcast. Before we get out of here, I want to remind you to make sure you check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast, because there's simply no better place to get all the news on the Big Ten Conference than with Locked On Big Ten and its host, Mr. Nate Dickinson. Follow the Locked On Big Ten podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your fine podcast. For this show, for Locked On CJ Stroud, for another day, we are out. We will be back tomorrow with a phenomenal, fun preview of this weekend's game against Maryland with Emily Giambavo from the Washington Post.